So now that we know we're doing a two-proportion hypothesis test, it's time to go ahead and start with our first step. Our first step with any hypothesis test is to go ahead and list. When we go to list with two samples, we need to decide which is going to be sample 1 and which is going to be sample 2. According to the question I'm asking, are white adults less likely than black adults to feel this way? It seems like I'd put white adults as sample 1 because they're first in the question, but this isn't not necessarily what I actually want to do. In fact, if I look over here, I can tell that black adults have a much higher percentage than white adults. And because I'm going to be subtracting these two off, taking a difference, it makes more sense for me to make black adults sample 1 and white adults sample 2. This means when I go ahead and list what I want, I need to list P1 hat. That'll be the proportion of black adults who feel this way, 80% or 0.80. And P2 hat will be the percentage of white adults who feel this way, which is 0.62. N1 will be the number of black adults who answered or who responded to the survey, and although that's not given on this table, Pew Research always puts the actual numbers for their samples on the last page of the studies, and in this case it was 402. I also need the number of white participants, and that was 3,147. Notice that sample 2 has a much larger sample size, which means when I go to calculate my pooled proportion, it's going to be pulled towards that 62% with the larger sample size associated with it. Before I do that, though, I need to go ahead and find my difference. P1 hat minus P2 hat. 80% minus 62% gives me 18%, or 0.18. After that, I calculate my pooled proportion. My pooled proportion is what would happen if I put everyone together, regardless of what racial or ethnic group they're in. And to get this, I'm going to take P1 hat times N1 plus P2 hat times N2 over N1 plus N2. Remember, if you're putting this in a calculator, make sure you put parentheses on the top and the bottom. This will give you 0.6404, 64.04%. Notice once again, this is skewed towards that second sample proportion because it's got the larger sample size, so it's pulling it over. The second step I have to do is my hypothesis. This is a really important step, and when I do my hypothesis, I'll list H0 and HA, my null and then my alternative. My null hypothesis is what I'm assuming is always going to happen. If I look at these two groups, they're divided by racial category, and what I'm going to assume here, as with any two sample hypothesis test, is that in reality, those racial categories or those two different categories don't actually matter. That is, if I pulled every white adult in the US and every black adult in the US, they would have exactly the same opinion on this topic. So I'm assuming P1 equals P2. My alternative hypothesis is what I'm actually trying to prove. I put P1 and P2, and then in between, I need to decide what sign it is. I do that by paying attention to which is which. That is, I know P1 goes with sample 1, which was black adults in the US, and P2 was white adults in the US. I want to show that white adults are less likely than black adults to feel this way, which means I need to have the second sample, white adults, on the lower end, which means I'm going to put a greater than symbol, which seems kind of counterintuitive. Once again, I'm doing this because white adults are supposed to be less likely than black adults to feel this way, so another way of saying that, black adults are more likely than white adults to feel this way.